Welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information program put together by people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club with help from students and faculty at WDHS, Dearborn High School, Dearborn, Michigan. My name is Gary Gardner. I am your host for this program, and I want to talk about something that's near and dear to me. As part of my career as an attorney, I have to talk, and I have English skills. Sometimes you've watched me long enough, you know my skills aren't all that great. But in my courtroom life, sometimes I have clients or other people have clients whose first language is not English, and we require the services of interpreters. And so today we have an interpreter who I've used for, it's been a while since we started working together. You show up at the courthouse and you're for my clients. We have Ratib Habbal, who is an Arabic interpreter. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yes, I am.
Good to have you here. So before we get into what interpreters are, what they are, where are you from? How did you wind up where you are?
So nice of you to invite me, Gary. Yeah, my parents are from Syria. They brought me here when I was 1 year old, and I grew up in the Bloomfield area. And my parents sent me to Syria every summer as I was growing up in middle school and high school. And of course, there's a lot of Arabs in the Detroit area, and that's really where I learned a lot of Arabic.
And when you were growing up, you went to high school, middle school, did you go on beyond high school?
Yes, I did Masters of Business at Wayne State University, and I continued going to the Middle East for trips, and I've been to the pilgrimage in Mecca, and I've been well versed, or I'm well immersed, I should say, in all the Arabic cultures like the Yemeni, Iraqi, Syrian, Egyptian.
And that's something that people don't really understand. It's like we have an American or a Canadian culture or an English culture. Are the differences between the Yemenis, the Egyptian, the Syrian, is there a big enough difference, or language differences that make a difference for a translator?
Thank God, not too big of a difference. It's almost like American, where it's considered accents, where there's someone who speaks British or Australian or Southern. They all understand each other, and then maybe 1 out of 100 words are really different. But definitely I speak Syrian, and people right away know that I'm from Syria.
So you have a master's degree, but somehow you got into the translation business. What was it that said, hey, Ratib, I want to be a translator? What got you into it?
Well, I graduated high school, and I knew Arabic very well, and I had no intention of being a translator of any kind. When I graduated high school, I wanted to be a pilot, and my father recognized that being a pilot means being away from home, family life, for more than half of the time, maybe 3/4 of the time. So he told me, go get your pilot license, which I did in a small airport in Troy, and do whatever else you'd like. So I liked business, and I did that in business. And then I was happy in the 90s, which about 25 years ago, to get a job as a U.S. representative for a company in Saudi Arabia. So for 8 years, I was going to New York City and different cities, translating for managers that were coming from the Middle East to here in the United States.
And that travel was not fun, or it wasn't as much fun as it's cracked up to be?
It was fun. I liked it a lot, but then I just had some changes. And then in '94, I got asked to come and translate for a witness in district court at a trial, and I had zero experience in translating in court. And then I got a taste of it, and then I was told I'm very good at it because I don't have an accent in English or in Arabic, and that's how the ball just started rolling. Yes.
So talk about the need from an attorney's perspective. If I have a client, I believe my client needs to understand what the judge is saying.
Yes.
Understand the questions that I'm asking, or he or she's being asked by the other side. Understand the responses from the other parties. And if a person's first language is not English, that becomes much more difficult for them to be able to fully participate in the system.
Most definitely. I think most people think they know more English than they actually know. And as you are well aware, in the legal field, every word has really its place, meaning, and could end up with a different direction for a case. So it is very important, my opinion, that everybody who feels that English is not their first language, they should work with a foreign language interpreter who's there just to help them and relay what exactly they're saying to the court.
And just as a cover, you're rear end thing, I had a criminal trial a couple of weeks ago in Ann Arbor. My client was from the Middle East. He had pretty good English skills, but I really wanted to make sure that he understood the questions, and I'm really happy that we had a translator. It wasn't you, it was one of the other translators who came in, and it made a big difference because there were things that as we got into the trial, questions especially when the prosecutor was asking him, that he needed to have the services of that translator to be able to understand the question and to respond.
That's exactly right, and it's also important for the legal terms that maybe even a common person who lives in America might not even know, let alone someone who came from a foreign country. They really wouldn't know.
Tell you a secret, some of the legal terms I don't know.
I don't think.
No, I think I have a pretty good grasp on those things. So the first time you did it,
Yeah.
you were there as an uncertified neophyte translator in the court. You're told you had a good facility for that type of work. What is the certification, if there's a certification process in the state of Michigan for translators?
In the state of Michigan and everywhere, unfortunately everywhere, there isn't any formal training for any foreign language interpreters. I wish there was, like universities who offered a degree. I think there's one university in California that offers some kind of translator or interpreter degree. But in the end, there isn't any. It's really learning from like a master and apprentice type relationship where someone would learn under the wings of someone else. And there is a qualifying and certifying exam offered by the state of Michigan.
Without training, how do you study for the qualifying exam, and what does the qualifying exam comprise of?
You're right about that. It is without training, and it's not easy. The qualifying exam is pretty simple. It's basic English terminology and phraseology and things like that. The certifying exam is all verbal for testing interpreting skills in those specific languages. Yes.
So if you are going through this process and you've become certified, what is it that a certified interpreter can do different or hopefully better than someone's brother or cousin coming along to help interpret for them, especially in a court situation?
It's funny you mentioned that because a lot of people do come to court thinking I need to bring my neighbor or brother or somebody to help me to understand what the judge is saying. They're assuming, number one, that the court's not going to provide them an interpreter. And number two, they're depending on someone that they feel like they trust and that they can, bring along to them. So your question was, what exactly can a certified or qualified interpreter do that the other people can't? Well, what they do is that if the respondent says 3 sentences, the interpreter, which is the verbal translator, should translate 3 sentences. And what could happen is that they might just translate 1 sentence and they might smooth out the edges or make things sound better or worse than the actual Arabic or foreign language that they use.
And that becomes a problem for the judicial system because the interpreter is not supposed to be adding, subtracting, or editing, or sanding, as I used to call it, some of the rough edges off the testimony.
You're exactly right. Let's imagine a woman gets beaten and she's in court. She needs to describe how bad her abuse is. Well, if she's saying in Arabic very bad, if she's describing in Arabic how bad it was, but then the sympathetic relative is translating, and they're not really conveying everything about how bad it is with words or actions or anything like that, then she might not get the justice she deserves because she's a battered woman. That can happen.
So as a translator, you're there and you're asked and you have a special oath to translate accurately and faithfully from English to Arabic and Arabic to English. But the actual doing it has got to be, how far back how many paragraphs can you hold in Ratib's brains before he has to say, hold on a second?
Well, 2 parts of that question. One is the oath, and the second one I'll tell you about. Let me tell you about the second one first. People ask me a lot, how am I able to listen and speak at the same time? And I tell them I'm married. I got a lot of practice already. I listen and speak at the same time. But that's just, in jest.
Well, that's like when you're arguing with your wife, it's like reading the end user license agreement. You read to the end and you say, yes.
Maybe they shouldn't give certification to interpreters who aren't married.
There you go.
There's a big question. Can they really listen and talk at the same time?
Yeah.
But that's just in jest.
Right.
In reality, when you mentioned also the oath, yes, when we start, every time I start a hearing, I have to raise my hand and swear to translate English to Arabic, Arabic to English. Now, if somebody brings their relative or neighbor, and they have to raise their hand and translate, swear an oath that they're going to verbally translate everything accurately. Well, if they're not translating accurately, they could be prosecuted because they resulted in maybe a change in how a ruling could have been. So I highly suggest, for the sake of everybody who's thinking of going with their relative to court to translate for them, number one, most likely they won't let you. And in the small case they let you, you're just endangering yourself. Whereas myself, I really, I get so used to it that I don't worry about endangering myself.
The other part of the question is the memory bank in Ratib's brain. How much can you hold before you have to say, hang on a second, I need to catch up with the translation?
You're correct. A person just has to have, long or a long attention span to their short-term memory. And by the third and fourth sentence, I usually start translating whether the person stopped talking Arabic or not. And many a times they go on to their fourth and fifth sentence, and I can listen to their Arabic and actually translate what they said in their first and second sentence.
Do you ever remember anything of all what you did at the end of the day?
Sometimes I'm so on autopilot that it almost becomes like when you're driving and you just take an exit that you don't even remember why I took that exit because you're so used to taking that exit. You're right. Sometimes I'm on autopilot. I'm translating so fast that at the end of the day, people ask me, hey, what did I say? Or what was said in court? Or why did they say it that way? And number one, I don't add or subtract anything, so I don't have conversation with people after court. But number two, you're right. By the end of the day, I sometimes don't exactly remember what exactly I translated because I'm going so fast and I'm so focused on just conveying that meaning.
Now, when you have an attorney who is experienced using a translator
Yes.
versus an attorney or a judge who doesn't understand the necessity for pauses or short questions, doesn't that make a difference?
Both that and there's, on the other hand, where a judge or an attorney will split a sentence in two, but the first part of the sentence by itself just doesn't make sense. And I have no idea why. They stop in the middle because they're, I guess, being over-considerate, which is nice of them. But they'll start a sentence, and me as an interpreter, I'll say, the interpreter does not understand what you said. And I've even had it where I've I've said to attorneys, the interpreter does not understand what you said, and the judge even chimed in, and the judge doesn't understand what you said either. And that's because they just chopped up their sentence in two parts. When they say the full sentence, oh, that's what you mean. So I'm really translating not verbatim, word for word. I'm translating the exact meaning of that sentence in its totality.
So do you think it might be a good idea as part of the translation service to train the attorneys and judges a little bit better, or give them a cheat sheet or something and say, here's what you as an attorney or as a judge might want to think about when you're using the services of a translator?
Maybe it would. My only thing that I would give them is to follow what the State Court Administrative Office says, and that is not to allow relatives and friends. Beyond that, it almost becomes like the school of hard knocks, where you almost learn your craft or your business throughout working with, and the more you work with them.
What I'm saying, though, is like with the attorney, say, listen, don't give me a 27 paragraph soliloquy, the opening of Shakespeare. Give me break it up a little bit so I can get the translation done.
You're right about that. That would be nice.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to continue our conversation with Ratib Habbal a little bit. Got some words about Kiwanis. We'll get some more into the translation and some of the nitty-gritty stuff. This, to me, is kind of interesting, so don't go away.
It's easy to get caught up in the details. The day-to-day grind, numb to the noise, going round and round and round. Deep down, there's something missing, a void inside, a hole to fill, a life lacking. Then, in a minute of clarity, it hits you. The aha moment. You're needed. Kids need you. Kids of all kinds. All these funny, rambunctious, sweet, attention-seeking, vulnerable bundles of energy. They need your love and support. Some have huge life hurdles. Poverty, disease, hunger. And they're reaching out for you. Around the corner, around the world. You are a Kiwanian at heart, a role model, a guide, a builder of dreams. Together, we are Kiwanis, passionate and strong, ready to move mountains or grains of sand. Imagine every child reaching their potential. The power to help is in you. It's not about us. It's about them. Do you hear the call? Kids need Kiwanis. Kiwanis needs you.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner. I'm your host. We're talking with Ratib Habbal, Arabic translator, and one of the things, there is a large population of foreign-born citizens and residents in Michigan.
Sure.
There must be tons and tons of translators in Michigan, or am I wrong?
Well, there's tons of neighbors and friends that know 2 languages. They're bilingual.
Right.
And most people actually think they know how to translate. They think they know much better than they actually can. Even the most educated people that I've run into who are of Arab origin have a hard time with translating just because they're not used to it.
So, but how many actually qualified or certified translators are there in Michigan for all the 9 million people in Michigan? How many certified translators are there, if you know?
I'm not really sure. They're listed on the State Court Administrative Office website.
Yeah.
And the reason that I don't know is because I'm really limited, or I'm not the kind of translator who knows about the whole industry. I'm just in the Detroit area and translating for the Arab community.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the crew suggested we try a little test.
Sure.
And so this is kind of how I would, I'll play both parts of the witness.
Sure.
And I'll ask the questions, then I'll respond, and let's see how this goes. So let's say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
صباح الخير يا سيداتي وسادتي هيئة المحلفين.
My name is Gary Gardner, and I'm glad that you're here to take your evidence and hear the case, and hope you decide fairly what's going to happen here today.
أنا اسمي جاري جاردنر، وأنا موجود هنا برحب فيكم وبطلب منكم إنه تسمعوا الحقائق والدلائل الموجودة في هذه القضية علشان حضرتكم تحكموا بعدل.
And participating in the judicial system is a very important part of the rights of a citizen, because you, as a citizen, want to be judged fairly if you were in the position of my client, or you want to have that opportunity to judge fairly as a juror.
مشاركتكم في هيئة المحلفين ضرورية، لأن لو حضرتكم تهمتوا بأي شيء تتمنوا إنه واحد يكون موجود بمكانكم علشان يقدر يحكم بمصيركم بعدل، وإنه اشتراككم كمواطن بهذا الدور كهيئة المحلفين ضروري جدا علشان يكون في عدل في هذا البلد.
I didn't think I said that much.
Well, in general,
Yeah.
even in Spanish,
Right.
Arabic and Spanish, you could say they're 20 to 30% wordier than
Okay.
English. Also, there are some words in English that I translate the actual meaning of the word. So that's 3 to 4 words instead of 1.
Got it.
But the bad part, not the bad part, or you have an unprofessional, is when the person says 5 or 6 words in Arabic and they go off into 60 or 70 words.
Right.
There's a lot more explanation because they have background of what the story is,
Try
and they're adding on to it.
Get the backstory in.
Yes, that's exactly why. Before court, sometimes they want to explain to me about the case for
Right.
some reason, and they always tell me just so I can have some background. And I tell them, listen, I don't need background. What you say is what I translate. They're like, yeah, but you need background. No, I don't. If you give me background, I'll be inclined to add more. If you don't give me any background, what I hear is what I translate. Works great.
With or without the background, I'm going to translate what I hear.
Exactly.
When obviously there's a bit of a delay, and it takes a little bit longer for a hearing with a translator. And I try to, it depends, because sometimes you have the translator translating back and forth, but
Yes.
I just did another trial last week with a Hispanic defendant, and during times when she was not being questioned, she was listening to the questions of other witnesses, her translator was just there in the background, and it didn't slow down the testimony much at all. I was inquiring of the witnesses. Witnesses were responding, and the translator was talking and translating for the defendant.
Yes, that's exactly right. With an experienced verbal translator, which is called an interpreter, you are correct. They're able to do what's called simultaneous translating. As long as I can hear that person clearly, in other words, they don't have their back turned to me or they're not mumbling, if I can hear them clearly, I can translate at the same time.
And it's funny you should say that, because normally my voice projects when I'm in court, and for once I got not admonished, but just reminded by the judge, Mr. Gardner, your voice is very low today.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I don't know why I was low, but it was. I was lost in thought trying to figure out what was going to go on. But that in simultaneous translation and thinking about moving forward, technology is coming into the world.
Okay,
And
yeah.
right now with my iPhone, if I go overseas, I can say something to it. Any language I want, I can carry on a conversation of sorts with anybody anywhere in the world. What's the thinking, if at anything, about the translators societies about this intelligent translations coming through?
You're right, technology is coming, and there's, from what I hear, obviously in everything, there's two schools of thought. One of them is saying that computers, technology, verbal interpreting will be replacing interpreters. And in fact, there's some issues in immigration court where they're talking about actually having technology replacing, and that's because they have so many phrases that they repeat over and over, and that it becomes almost like repetitive or over and over. But where we're involved, let's say in the family court, where there's a lot of intricacies in the language, there's a lot of emotion being conveyed as well, and there's a lot of people who just ramble on. Technology is a little further away from being replaced. And but in the end, that's not the biggest, let's call it, threat to foreign language interpreting. If you want, I'll tell you.
What's the biggest threat?
I think the biggest threat is the dominance of the English language worldwide. And when I say threat, I mean threat to the translating industry. It's not a threat, really, quote unquote. It's kind of like why there will be less language translators in the future needed. That's because you could imagine, just 30 years ago, not as many, you could travel Europe, not as many people knew English. Today, a lot more people know English, likewise in the Middle East. And the next one, and the other factor is that there's less immigrants coming into the U.S. for various reasons, political reasons. And the last one is the internet and everybody's ability to watch dish and cable and TV. English is just everywhere. I'm talking in 100 or 200 years, English will probably be the dominant language of the planet. I mean, that's just a far-fetched prediction. Far-fetched prediction on my part, but it's not so far-fetched because the trend is that English is taking over.
Although, based on my experience, I use voice dictation in my law practice.
Yes.
And when I first got the voice dictation, it was a system that required me to speak in discrete words because it could not understand if I put two words together.
Yeah.
Now I have a system that I use. It's very $150 program. I can talk about this speed to my computer. It picks up with the high level of accuracy, but it's still not. It still misses a lot of stuff. So I think there's some security going forward for your business there.
Two schools of thought. Maybe there is some security.
So as you are downtown and you're going from court to court, talk about a typical day. How many different courtrooms does Ratib find himself up in a typical day downtown?
I like focusing in on the Wayne County Circuit Court. Lots of divorces there. I'm also a trained mediator, so I've been doing some mediations in Arabic there. A lot of family matters when I say divorces going on there. And I also go to federal court. I used to do many more courts like district court, immigration, and others, but I just trimmed them down to just those 2 buildings. It's much easier just to stay. And then you get popular in those buildings as well.
You get popular, and then, apparently you're liked because you get called a lot. Is there like a service that you work through, or do you work through your own service?
No, I'm independent. I work through my own. People call me directly to my cell phone, and I'm quick to reply by email or by text message, and that's how they like it. They like calling me and finding out, more importantly, can I make it or not?
You said at the beginning of our conversation that at the beginning of your career you were working as a translator for businesses.
I was.
Are you available for people who don't just need a translation but do need some business translation?
No, not as much. See, the translation part is the written part,
Okay.
and that involves it becomes almost like homework. You have an assignment,
Yep.
you have a deadline, they grade you how accurate you are, but the good part is you could do it at night or in the morning or anytime. I tried a few, and I just don't like the translation so much, the typing or translating books or pamphlets. What I like is the verbal translating, known as interpreting, and that's what I've been sticking to.
So because you're your own independent person, you become a little obstinate in your old age and you want to do what you want to do.
Yes, I like being out and about. I like meeting people. I like talking. I like being under pressure. In other words, pressure all the time, just to be on top of my game. That's really what I thrive on.
Down about our last minute or so. So if you were to give advice to anybody who needed the services of a translator in court, what would you tell someone as you first meet them? What do you say to them, and what would that advice be?
Any person that needs a translator, they would think that judges or court would discriminate against them just because they're a foreigner. Let me say that in Arabic too. أي واحد بحاجة لمترجم بيحسب إنه القاضي أو غيره حيتحيزوا ضدهم لسبب إنه ما بيعرفوا اللغة الإنجليزية. And in reality, they've encountered judges and prosecuting attorneys, everybody. They've encountered so many foreigners. والحقيقة إنه هن تعرفوا أو تعاركوا أو عفوا تعاملوا مع كثير من الناس ومن كثير أنواعهم. And for that reason, they should really contact the court. And just like any person who has let's call it needs accommodations, مثل أي واحد بحاجة لمساعدة خاصة, they should contact them and they should ask for their foreign language interpreter for their hearing. They're better off with it than without it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you very much, Ratib, for coming in. Now, I thought I knew
My
a little
pleasure.
bit. I butcher the English language on a regular basis when I'm out there talking. I give full marks to you for being able to pick up from what people are saying and the back and forth from the English to Arabic, Arabic to English. Thank you very much for
My
coming in and
pleasure.
watching this show. We'll see
My
you down in the
pleasure.
courthouse.
Yes.
See you again next time on KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner. Bye-bye.